to the SJ Child Show. This episode is sponsored by Water and Body Basics. Visit 3440 South, 5600 West, West Valley City, Utah. Mention SJ Childs today.
Hi, and welcome to the SJ Childs Show. I'm your host, SJ Childs, and today I have a special guest coming all the way from the top of the Northwest, from Seattle. It's so great to have you here today, Charlie. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name wrong again, so I'll just give it over to you.
Yeah, so I'm Charlie Cotugno, and I'm a photographer here in Seattle, Pacific Northwest.
They love that. And, you know, you're the very first photographer that I have interviewed. So I'm very excited to talk to you about this and the processes and some projects that you have worked on in the past, which is how we became connected. Was a great friend of mine, Cassandra. Thank you so much, Cassandra, for sending me this article about you doing photographs for autism. And I am a huge advocate for autism, global autism speaker, and the love of all things autism. So I was so honored to reach out to you and have you accept to be on the show, of course. So thank you so very much. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. I originally from Boston, grew up there, spent 15 years between New York, London, and LA, working as a musician, actor, writer, director, waiter, sometimes, whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
And I was also an audio engineer, and I came to Seattle in '94 after being recruited by Microsoft to do some work with their video teleconferencing. This was too long ago, way back, I don't know, the age of dinosaurs, I guess, but it was before the web. And so I did that. And concurrently, I was running a photography business. And so my wife and I were up here, and my original plan was to be at Microsoft for 5 years and then go full-time into photography. And then in year 4, when my son was born, we knew things weren't going, quote, normally as they had with my daughter. And after, I think he was about 4 months old, we were trying to feed him, get him going on solid food. And he was rejecting it. And we thought, well, okay, boys develop slowly, is what they tell you.
Yeah.
But then after close to a year, he was still rejecting solid foods. We had a feeding study done with him at Seattle Children's Hospital. And they said he had sensory integration disorder with oral tactile defenses. Well, exactly what does that mean? And it's essentially sensitivity to oral, anything that was being put in his mouth. And so one thing led to another that led to speech delays, because as we learned, children develop the muscles for speaking by eating and by chewing.
Yeah.
That helps everything. And so he started having those delays, and then some cognitive delays, and one thing on top of the other. And at that time, it was finally when he was 3 years old in 2001 that they said, yeah, he's on the autism spectrum. Where, we're not sure, but he's somewhere on the autism spectrum. And we weren't surprised by that, because at that time, like I said, they were waiting until kids were 3 before they made a diagnosis, which made it difficult to get services we thought he ought to have. But luckily, working at Microsoft, I think they have about the best autism benefit anywhere. So they picked a lot of stuff up. And so my 5-year plan ended up being 20.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so because we just couldn't beat the benefits. But because of those benefits, you would never know he was on the spectrum today. He's considered one of the top up-and-coming jazz saxophonists in the Pacific Northwest, and we can get into that a little bit later.
Exciting.
But anyway, getting back to how this project started was, my wife was running him to 2 or 3 therapies a day, dragging my daughter along, who's a little bit older, she was getting resentful because he was getting all of the attention, which drew into another whole host of issues.
Another therapist for those, right?
Yeah, we'll save that for another podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so she was doing all that, and I thought, maybe there's something I can do. And so I came up with the idea of just photographing, starting out with kids on the autism spectrum and having their parents or whomever their guardian was. I just wanted an honest depiction of what it was like having autism in the family. Yeah. And I say having autism in the family because even if only one family member has autism, the whole family is dealing with autism, which a lot of people don't understand. So my mission was really awareness, acceptance, and inclusion. It was just a simple 3-word mission. And so I started doing photographs. I think I photographed around 10 here in the Seattle area and figured that was going to be it. And I put them up in a Starbucks. At that point, Starbucks would have local artists come in, and I printed these really big 24 by 30 on canvas, everything done in black and white, and put them up and figured that was it. And then I started getting phone calls from people. Mm-hmm. Hey, can my kid be involved? This is pretty cool. Okay, so I expanded it. Then I started getting phone calls from different organizations who heard about it. And then I got phone calls from press. I did television. There were articles about it in a lot of the photographic industry magazines. And so I thought, well, I don't have the budget to travel everywhere and do this. Why not make it a nonprofit? So I started the process of all the paperwork, assembling a board. And I remember throughout all this time, there were tons of exhibits of it. It was like at least one a month. And so it was an exhibit at a place called the Wallingford Center in Seattle in a pretty big space. And this gal just came up and started talking to me. And she said, I really like the project, like the portraits. What are you doing with it? And I said, well, what I'd really like to do is turn it into a nonprofit. I'm in that process. And she said, well, I work with a group of volunteer lawyers, and we help people put together nonprofits. All you have to do is send in an application, and if it's approved, we take care of all the legal work for free. You just have to pay the fees, no lawyer fees. And I was on it.
Yeah.
So we became a nonprofit, and over the next several years, I brought in people from all over the country. I think probably 40 out of 50 states were represented, some in Canada. I think I might have had one in England, one in Australia. But it ended up being that I probably recruited about 250 photographers to go out in the communities, create images of people, not just kids, but adults as well on the autism spectrum. And everybody wrote a story about what it was like to live with autism. And I told them, I don't care if it's happy, angry, whatever. We just really need to see what you really feel and your emotions. And we want the photographs to reflect that. So with those 250 photographers, we probably did about a total of 450 portraits.
Wow.
And we would do it in yearly cycles. So every year I would do the project. We would start in January, get everything by the end of February, and then it was a mad rush to put the website together, add everything in, and then it would be released on World Autism Day.
Yeah, April. Yeah.
Right. So April 1st, I think, is when we would do it. And so
fantastic.
Anyway, we kept that going for a long time. And after a while, I left Microsoft in 2014 to concentrate just on my photography career. And doing that and being the only person working on the project was just a bit much. I didn't have the time to invest. And so anyway, the project officially shut down a year and a half ago, but in all reality, 2018 was really about the last time. But, I still get emails every once in a while from people today, or phone calls.
I hunted you down, right?
But, I get emails every once in a while of maybe a family who just discovered their child was diagnosed with autism, and they're doing a search on the web, and they run across the images and the stories, and they'll tell me, we were really, really freaked out and angry when we just got this diagnosis. We still are, but reading these stories and seeing these images have actually given us a sense of hope.
Yeah.
And that's, what more can you ask for than that? To be able to
Absolutely.
help somebody out in that situation, because we know what that situation is like. Coming to the realization, it can't be, maybe he'll grow out of it, whatever, but after a while it sinks in. And it's like the whole grieving process.
Absolutely.
And
I always say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter whether it's autism or anything else,
It's so true.
Anything else, it could be a terminal disease or something. People go through this in all aspects of life.
Yeah, that is so true. We all have to kind of come to a crossroads where we have to go through something challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of us, it's lifelong, diagnoses for our children and
Mm-hmm.
our adults in our life. And the one thing I love that I align in that same belief system with you is in the celebration of that. And not only celebrating the happy times, I love how you also gave grace and respect and honor to those unhappy, to those really challenging times, because that's where that hope comes from, to say, okay, this is how we can kind of relate to this. Oh my gosh, this is how that child has grown, and see those inspiring stories of hope. And really, it comes to the parent's state of mind. Mm-hmm. And that mindset that you get to the point, at least for me, okay, enough of the why did this happen? How could this have happened? Like, now what does our life look like? And on to what do we do better now? How can we help? And I'm not sure, how old is your son now?
He's 22 now.
Okay. So he's gone through all the life transition phases and everything. Yeah. And that is so valuable also, especially for our younger, our younger parents with diagnoses to hear and see those stories of the kids that grow up and have success. Just in the show, we've been able to interview some incredible autistic adults that have gone on to get PhDs. Mm-hmm. And, were nonverbal until they were 8 or 13 and still are successful adults. So it's all in what we put our, minds to it. If we believe in our children, if we believe that they are limitless beings of, exploration, and encourage them to be their best.
Right. And, the other part of it is too, we have to believe in ourselves, because that's the example that, we set for our kids. And it's not always easy to do that when you're raising a kid with challenges. There are definitely times when you get frustrated and, you don't mean to maybe make your kid feel bad, but you do, and you're like, oh my God, what did I do? This is my life. And you got to break that cycle. And you have to. With my wife and I think our whole approach was just treat him like a normal kid. Yeah, that's what he does. He is who he is. He acts how he acts. That's it. Just deal with it and live life as normal. And it was really interesting because his speech was delayed, and we were seeing a child neurologist, and we brought him in one time for an evaluation, and he said, he understands every single thing you're saying, and which is good and bad. And yes, and then he said he is going to speak, and when he does, it's just going to be an explosion, and it was. And he started with echolalia. Yeah. I remember one day he came up to me and said, "Hey, Dad, you should get a new car." I'm like, "Well, I don't need a new car." And he said, "Well, if you call 1-800-DITECH," and he's just completely repeating a commercial. And then he would have his script. He would, we'd go to the park. I'd take him and his sister to the park, and my wife would be along, and he'd go up to play with other kids, and he would say, "Hi, my name's Jackson. This is my sister, Miranda. That's my dad. He works at Microsoft. He has no hair." And and there were other
love that.
couple of funny things. I don't know.
I love those things. No,
you may want to cut this, but I'll put it in anyway. One day, I was in the bathroom, and he walks in and asks me a question, and I'm standing there, and I said, "Okay, Jackson, you should leave. You never walk in with people." He said, "Okay," and then he looked at me and said, "Oh, by the way, cool penis." I'm just glad.
So literal?
I was just so glad we weren't at a trough at a Mariners game.
Gosh, yes. He's like, compliments for everyone.
Exactly. But,
oh, that's great.
But he's definitely today you would never suspect, and I'm excited.
I want to talk about him. So
yeah,
let's do this.
I don't mean you would never suspect, but he seems a little weird. Because when I was when I was growing up, the quote weird kids, they might have been the kids who were never diagnosed,
exactly.
And they were always treated as quote the weird kids.
Yeah.
And he was for a while, and it was tough, but he's just got always had this personality that is so open, inviting to people. Almost nothing bothers him, even to this day. But all the work that we were able to do in early intervention and the therapies, almost all of which it'll come on, it'll tell me.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, my son developed a big interest in music, and I guess it might have been because of me and my music experience, and my whole family is musical anyway, the family I grew up in. And he became a drummer, and he liked it. And then there were so many drummers in the elementary school band, an opening came up for a saxophonist, and he figured, well, yeah, I'll get on stage more. People will see me more. And so anyway, he took up the saxophone, and I think he was in 8th grade when he took up the saxophone. And we rented him one, and he just, I don't know, he mastered it almost instantly. Maybe not mastered, but his progress was amazing. And not only that, he was researching jazz saxophonists. Wow. And he knew just about everybody's life, especially back in the 50s and 60s, what they were addicted to, how they beat their addiction, if they beat their addiction.
Wow.
It was just amazing.
That's
he just
cool.
immersed himself in it.
I love that.
And he became quite good. And when he was in 9th grade, only say a year and a half later, he won this huge award for being the best musician in the jazz band. And so he just kept rolling, got some great teachers. One funny story was he was doing a class at Cornish here in Seattle, a college. And they had people come in and, work with the kids. It was a high school program. And so that was the summer of 2015. And then in January of 2016, the last David Bowie album came out. Huge David Bowie fan. And I'm listening to it. I'm like, man, who is the sax player? Guy's really great. I think Jackson would like him. And so I texted him. I said, hey, you got to hear the new Bowie album. There's this sax player on there named Donnie McCaslin. I think you're really going to like him. Have you ever heard of him? And he texted me back, heard of him. I know him. I've worked with him.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, which was really great. And then that kind of triggered my memory that, oh yeah, I remember talking to a sax teacher when they did this performance, end of 2-week performance. And, he said how great Jackson was and he was doing well and everything. And so he has, over the years, worked with some really high profile saxophonists. And he was at San Francisco Conservatory of Music. He was there for a year and a half. He left right before the pandemic started, which was great timing. But, he's done tours. He's played all over the country. New Orleans, Orlando, Denver, San Francisco, the Monterey Jazz Festival. And right now he's, with COVID happening, he moved back home. And now that everything's opened up, I mean, he's probably playing 4 or 5 nights a week. I'll go out to see him. And, we're talking guys, who are like my age, 50s and 60s, who have been playing for years. And they're like nothing but praising his playing. And he plays it all down. He won't even tell us when he has a gig. We have to do the research to find out,
Because to him, he's just living his passion, isn't he?
That's all he's doing. And, to him, it's no big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
I keep telling him, you've got something here. Go out, do this, do that, but he handles everything on his own. I mean, he works during the day. He's delivering pizzas right now as we speak.
Good for him.
But he's grown up to be pretty typical.
Yeah.
As his parents, we know the little things,
the quirks, right? Yeah.
Here and there. But as far as having a job, planning his own travel, had girlfriend, drives, so I know where it is. And as far as that goes, we hit the jackpot with luck, getting the early intervention, keeping him going, not giving up, and just trying to give him belief in himself. And
that is so important. I think that's one of the most important things for any child is building up that belief in themselves, that self-confidence and that empowerment that they need. Because it is incredible, because I can even see with my own son, the people who believe in him, the people who don't. He clings to those who believe in him. He turns away from those who don't. And they're so sensitive to those feelings. And I love how you said the doctor, that told you he can understand everything you're saying to him. I think that that's precious, because I think too often doctors are saying, no, he'll never, they'll never, she'll never. And I think that they really need to stop, and they really need to stop doing that. I mean, of course, there are times and circumstances, but for the most part, why would we want to bring a negative feeling to a family? Let's say whatever, however much help and support you can give them, that's how much they'll grow. That's what these parents need to hear. So, And the other thing is, don't be afraid to give your doctor the boot. Yeah.
We had to do that.
That is so true.
His original pediatrician, I mean, especially my wife, was so tuned in. She knew something wasn't right. And at that point, we didn't know if it might be autism or anything else, but we were pushing our pediatrician to get, further tests done. And I remember the day, I think my son was maybe a year and a half, and we were in there. It was late in the afternoon, and we're trying to get her to, give us a referral for some services. And she just put her hand on her hip, turned her head, and she said, "What do you think he's got, a brain tumor or something?" And that was that. We walked out and we found someone else who was willing to,
less ignorant.
I mean, you don't expect that out of somebody in the medical field.
Tough. It's so tough.
And it's not only with kids, it's with adults as well.
Yeah.
Doctors that get into a routine, they know what they want to prescribe for this or that. And
they stop looking at the whole picture.
Right. Everything's a false alarm, because many things are false alarms.
It's hard.
You don't know that unless you check them out.
Yes.
And that's another thing. Do not be afraid to fire a physician or anybody else. Therapist. Doesn't matter if it's somebody working on gross motor skills.
Yeah.
Inside if it's right or if it's wrong.
Definitely.
You do.
What I always get kind of frustrated by is I love that companies are now giving parent support or parent training and, you know, parent coaching, except for when, and I hate sound awful like this, but I cannot receive information well from a college student who's got all their information out of a book and has no children. Right. That is the hardest person to receive parenting advice from. I know I can't do it. Right. Yeah. So I think these companies need to kind of take a look at that and explore ways to maybe, employ their parents instead for these parent coach positions, because I just remember having a girl come in and just saying, well, if he's not sleeping, take everything out of his room and shut the lights off and shut the door and leave him. I was like,
and eventually they'll sleep, right?
Yeah. Okay. We're not.
Or, we were working with a therapist one time, and this guy was coming into our home, and we had just started the concept of doing timeouts with him, and don't put him in his bedroom because associates monitor his bedroom, find a spot. And so we decided to start doing that. And so we put him in this one area, and he was especially upset that day, and he was trying to run out. And, I'm on my knees down at his level, trying to communicate eye to eye, trying to calm him down. And he just hauled back and kicked me in the groin. Oh. And so we were like, all right, maybe that doesn't work for this kid, a lot of times therapists and doctors give you advice. And again, it's like you said, I mean, even if they do have kids of their own who may have been neurotypical, they haven't dealt with 24-hour life cycle of dealing with a kid who functions just differently.
Yeah. Different thinking process. Like you have to learn how to think differently as a parent.
Right.
It has opened my mind up, my patience and my love and everything, tenfold over what I could have ever expected it to have been. Especially those early years of when he was nonverbal, and you really had to accept the physical touch as his way of showing love, or, there's just those tiny little things that you would pick up on because the words weren't coming and you weren't hearing it. And then I had, and my kids sound like they were opposite yours. I have a daughter who's 2 years younger, and, she was just like obsessed with shoes, talking about everything. It was just opposites as could be.
Right.
However, now we know she is also in the spectrum, so that doesn't matter. There's just like a time for everything to be revealed and to be, supported in its own time frame. Like I said, we never would have expected, because we were looking at it in our son, seeing, okay, this is exactly how it is in boys. And our daughter is completely different than that. Well, boys and girls are different anyways. And now we know that she, through whatever hormones, chemical process, was learning to mask things from the very beginning, and could, copy things and be very intelligent with her speech with adults, but has a really hard time connecting with kids her age.
Right.
Because she's on like this emotional intelligence level that they're not. And it's really tricky, but I'm learning. It's still a learning, right? Still my path of learning. She's only 9. So I have more ways to go. No, but it's really great to just know and to kind of have that peace in your mind when you've been dealing, with autism for 2 decades now, me only a decade, but in that time frame, I've learned so much. I've had so much compassion, and I love to be able to do things like this with you today and celebrate all things autism.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of people think, okay, kids are 18.
Or it's not April anymore, right?
Right. And, even to this day, I think, one thing where I notice it with my son is when he's communicating with other people via email or text, especially if it's to him, it's something important to him. It might be he's looking to get a lesson from, some very well-known jazz saxophonist. He has no problem approaching them. He has no problem with the idea of approaching them. But if he's writing something, he's, Dad, come here, read this. tell me if it's okay. I'm like, sure, it's fine. Don't worry about it. You sure? What if they think this? I'm like, don't worry. You're overanalyzing it.
Yes.
And then sometimes with decisions, there's pros and cons to everything. And then he will say, well, maybe I'll do this. But what if I do this? I said, well, do this because this. And well, no, I can't do this because that. Well, then do the other thing. Well, no, I can't do it because of that. So sometimes those decisions that he has to make aren't always the easiest for him. Yeah. And there are times when I just say, look, you figure it out. I've told you all I can do.
Exactly. Here's my guidance. Take it or leave it.
Exactly. Yep. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
I tell him I am not going to be trapped in your vortex.
Yep. I like that.
And bottom line is, I don't mind proofreading something. That's fine. But, not going to be doing anybody any favors if you do it for them. They have to learn to do it for themselves. And, for the most part, that's regardless of neuroability. It's another thing, people sometimes treat others or kids, who may have a neuro challenge as if they're 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah.
And speak to them that way. And, I find that really degrading. You know?
Definitely.
And I will tell people, I would tell people, he's 11. You can speak to him like an 11-year-old.
Yeah, definitely.
The one thing though that was really important to me about the project. It was great to have everybody involved, but I just remember, and I'd seen other people experience it. They would have a kid with a neuro challenge, and they'd be in the grocery store. And kid might start having a meltdown in the checkout line. And it's amazing to me that other people would have the audacity to say, control your child.
Oh, What's know.
Wrong? You are not, what kind of parent are you? I remember one time being in Boston. My wife and I were visiting, and this was actually before my son was even born. And we were in a drugstore, and we were picking up something to drink or something like that. And we're in line, and there was an older gentleman in front of us, and in front of him was a woman with a child who obviously had some challenges. And this older guy in front of us started admonishing.
Degrading, yeah.
You got to be quiet, or either me or your mom are going to give you a smack across the face.
Oh my goodness!
And it's kind of culturally that way sometimes in Boston, even still. But anyway, just zero compassion that people would have, zero understanding. When my son was still having food issues, he was like 4 or 5 years old and still eating baby food. And I would have, maybe 15 jars of baby food. And someone would say, oh, how old is your baby? And I would just say 9 months.
Yeah. Save me this story.
I don't want to get into it.
Oh, definitely.
But that was really important to me, was that, was the acceptance and inclusion part of it. That, just because someone is different doesn't mean they're any less than anyone else. Because if we dig deeply enough, we will find something different about you.
Exactly,
you
right?
You would not like to be treated the way you're thinking of treating someone else.
I love that you said that. That's a really, really great point to make. And I hope that everybody listening can understand that and really just be compassionate to those who are around them. Of course, my listeners are compassionate anyways, but teach all of your friends that aren't, please. Yes. So that's wonderful. It was such an honor to have you on today. If people that are in Washington, are you still doing photography now? So can we send
Absolutely.
a website and everything? Perfect.
Yeah, so absolutely. So and this kind of ties into the whole autism project thing. So when I was doing my business, I was mostly portraits, families, things like that. But because of the work I was doing, I started getting inquiries from organizations and companies who work with people with neuro challenges and physical challenges, getting them into the workplace. And so I started working with a lot of companies that do that.
Great.
That grew into not only people with disabilities, but when we're talking about, diversity, equity, inclusion. So I do a lot of work in that space with organizations. So in a few different ones up and down the West Coast.
Great.
And so that to me, I love doing my job. I love the regular commercial photography I do. I'm a headshot photographer, do a lot of business work, but when I can connect that work to an organization that is, helping people with diversity, equity, helping people with challenges become part of the workplace, that just has a little bit more meaning to me.
I love that. Yeah.
I just really love doing that work. To me, it's important.
Have you ever heard of the Idea Project up there?
I haven't.
In Washington. No. I'll have to get you the information. It's a gal who has a son with Down syndrome. And so she created, kind of along the same lines, but a learning educational system to go into schools and teach them all about diversity and all about how to help a neurodiverse student or peer. And some of the struggles that she sets up like these little booths, and they go and they read something backwards to show them what dyslexia looks like, or, and all these different little challenges. And that is such a great way to help our community by doing those little things. So I'll have to get you guys together.
So anyway, the easiest way to get to my website is bizpix.net, bizpix.net.
Perfect.
And it's, like I mentioned, I do mostly commercial photography, a lot of headshots, executive portraits, things like that. But if you go under, I have a tab there that I think that says personal projects. The Stories of Autism project is under there.
Great.
I have to add more of my work that I've done over the years in there. Also can just go to storiesofautism.com and it takes you directly to that page. And
perfect.
Website as well.
I love that. And I'll make sure to have all those links down in the description and text up on the screen after we edit it. Excuse me. And we will have everything ready to go so you won't miss a beat. Thank you so much for your time today, Charlie. It was such a pleasure to meet you.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great. I'm so glad that it was. Nobody said that they've had a horrible time yet.
Well, that's good.
Right. That always means that you're doing something right if somebody hates you, though.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a band called The Tubes, an outrageous band, one of my favorites ever. And their lead singer, a guy named Fee Waybill, he had a saying. He says, you're successful once you've been sued.
Yeah. That's great. You're a good author when you get 1-star review on Amazon, right?
At least somebody read it, right?
From somebody who's saying, I didn't talk about a cure for autism. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, heavens. Yeah. And Amazon, you just can't, you can't get those suckers off there. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time today. And everybody, please go check out the Autism Story and go check out Charlie's website. And if you do need pictures done and you are in the Seattle, Washington area, please do contact him to get them. Thank you for your time today. And we will definitely be in touch.
Great. Thank you very much,
Charlie.